My name is Eli, and I am 10 years old. I live in a small house made of mud bricks in Goshen, the part of Egypt where my people, the Israelites, have been slaves for generations. My father spends long days making bricks under the hot sun, building Pharaoh's cities, while my mother weaves baskets and prepares food for our family. Life is harsh, and the weight of slavery makes us all tired. But my parents often whisper of hope, speaking of a promise God made to our ancestor Abraham. They say a prophet named Moses has come, sent by God to free us. I didn't fully understand what this meant until the plagues began. It started with the Nile River, our source of life in Egypt. One day, Moses and his brother Aaron went to Pharaoh and demanded that he let us go. Pharaoh refused, and then it happened. The river turned into blood. Not just red like rust, but thick, dark blood. It stank of death, and all the fish died. The Egyptians screamed in horror, and we Israelites watched from our homes in awe. Pharaoh's magicians tried to copy this miracle, but their tricks were nothing compared to the power Moses and Aaron had through God. Even so, Pharaoh's heart stayed hard. The blood was only the beginning. Soon, frogs covered the land. They were everywhere, in our houses, our ovens, even our beds. I couldn't sleep with their croaking all night. When Pharaoh begged Moses to make it stop, the frogs died, leaving piles of rotting bodies that filled the air with a horrible stench. Then came lice, tiny, itchy creatures that covered everyone in Egypt. Pharaoh's magicians admitted they couldn't match this power, saying, "This is the finger of God." But still, Pharaoh refused to let us go. Then, swarms of flies came, buzzing and biting. But something strange happened in Goshen, where we Israelites lived. There were no flies. God had begun to show He was protecting us from the plagues that punished the Egyptians. Next, disease struck their animals: horses, donkeys, camels, cows, and sheep. They all died, but not one of our animals was harmed. Pharaoh's stubbornness made no sense to me. Why couldn't he see the power of our God? When boils, painful sores, broke out on the Egyptians and their magicians, they could do nothing but cry out in pain. Still, Pharaoh wouldn't listen. Then came hail like I'd never seen before. Huge chunks of ice that rained down, destroying Egypt's crops and trees. In Goshen, there was no hail, and my father pointed to the fields, saying, "See how God spares us. He is with us." As if the hail wasn't enough, the next plague brought locusts, swarms of them that ate every green leaf and blade of grass left in Egypt. The land was stripped bare, but Pharaoh's heart was still hard. Then came 3 days of total darkness. It was so dark that the Egyptians couldn't even see their hands in front of their faces. But in our homes, there was light. I remember sitting by the oil lamp with my family, feeling a strange mixture of fear and hope. God was clearly fighting for us, but Pharaoh still refused to let us go. Then came the night that changed everything, the night of the Passover. Moses told us to prepare a perfect lamb, one for each family. My mother roasted the meat, and my father brushed its blood on our doorframe with a bundle of hyssop. I asked him why we were doing this. He knelt down, his face serious but calm. "Tonight, the angel of death will pass through Egypt. The blood on our door will be a sign that we belong to God, and He will protect us." That night, we ate quickly, standing up with our sandals on, ready to leave at any moment. Suddenly, a terrible wailing rose up across Egypt. The firstborn in every Egyptian household had died, from Pharaoh's own son to the lowest servant's child. But in our homes, not one of us was harmed. Pharaoh finally told Moses to take us and leave. We packed in a hurry, taking only what we could carry. My mother handed me a small bundle of bread wrapped in cloth. "This is all we have for the journey," she said. I walked with my family, surrounded by thousands of Israelites. For the first time, I felt hope rising in my heart. After many days of walking, we reached the edge of the Red Sea. It was beautiful, but also terrifying, an endless stretch of water blocking our path. Then we heard the sound of chariots. Pharaoh had changed his mind and sent his army after us. People panicked, crying out to Moses, "Why did you bring us here to die?" Moses stood calmly and raised his staff. A powerful wind roared, and the sea began to split. I couldn't believe my eyes. The water rose into towering walls on both sides, and the ground beneath became dry. "Walk through," my father said, pulling me along. We stepped into the sea, surrounded by walls of water. I looked up and saw fish swimming on the other side of the watery wall. It was like walking through a dream. When we reached the other side, we turned and saw Pharaoh's army charging into the sea. But as soon as the last Israelite stepped onto dry land, Moses stretched out his staff again. The waters crashed down, swallowing the Egyptians. I felt a rush of relief and awe. God had saved us. The wilderness was harsh and unfamiliar. We didn't have much food, and people began to complain. But God provided. Every morning, manna, a sweet bread, appeared on the ground. It tasted like honey and filled our bellies. When we grew thirsty, Moses struck a rock with his staff, and water gushed out. Even though life was difficult, we could see God's care for us every day. One day, we came to Mount Sinai, a towering mountain wrapped in clouds. Moses climbed to the top to meet with God. The mountain shook with thunder and lightning, and we were told not to go near it. I was scared, but also amazed. When Moses came down, he carried 2 stone tablets with God's commandments, laws for us to live by as God's people. Now we are still in the wilderness, traveling to the land God promised us, a land flowing with milk and honey. I don't know what it looks like, but I believe we will get there. This is my story, the story of a child who saw God's power, walked through the sea, and now follows Moses toward freedom. Someday, I will tell this story to my children, and they will know how God saved us. Thank you so much for watching. Your support means the world to us. If you enjoyed this journey through history, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our future adventures. We've got more amazing stories coming your way. Stay tuned.